What's going on, everybody? Today I am starting filming part 10. Now, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. Normally I do a whole bunch of stuff to the truck and then I show you what I've done and how I've done it. But based on the lack of time I'm going to have over the next week and my desire to continue pushing forward, I'm going to film as I kind of get stuff done. So the first thing that we're going to tackle with this video, I think in the last video I did the intake and the fan wiring and a couple other things. In this video, we're going to talk about how to get the oil pressure gauge working using a factory sending unit, what the parts you need to do that are. I'm going to show you how I fixed the exhaust, hopefully, and maybe a first drive. We'll see. But anyway, on to the oil pressure sending unit. So this is the factory Toyota sending unit off the 1FC engine. And my goal here is to use this and have no issues using this and not to disrupt the GM one, which on the LS engine, your oil pressure sending unit is right here. It's in the center of the valley in the back on the valley pan. This runs directly to the GM PCM, and I don't really want to mess with that. I wanted to find another source for oil pressure, but that involves some fittings and finding another location where you have oil pressure, and that is looking at the pan. So here I've got my backup oil pan. This is the same oil pan I have on my truck currently. This is a factory pan which will probably make its way onto the truck. Again, I think I said I don't really like the Dorman pan that's on there. But all of the turbo F-body guys get their oil feed from this location. Here is where you have oil pressure. Now, I'm not going to put a fitting in the end of this hole. That's really not tapped and not drilled, so that doesn't really do anything. But ICT makes this billet adapter. This is mainly for running an oil feed from. So what you're going to want to do is unbolt this from the pan. Might be some gross stuff that comes out here. And here you have that piece that you no longer need. And in this location, you now put this billet adapter. So as you can see, these are shaped the same. There's two pretty much two oil ports on this. They are teed together by this fitting. This fitting will bolt onto here. Now, to get this to adapt to the sending unit, you have to buy some adapters. The first thing you need to do is actually move the oil pressure sending unit out of the way. Your exhaust is going to come down right through here unless you do something really wild, which I mean, that's up to your build. But my exhaust runs right next to here, so getting that sending unit out of the way is important. So I bought this adapter. Now this thread here is 1/8 inch NPT. It's natural pipe thread. So that's like a standardized size. So I just bought a male to female 90-degree elbow, which will thread into here. Of course, I'm not really going to leave this together, but I'm just going to show you this for demonstration. So that's going to bolt here, like so. And it comes with these countersunk screws and this O-rings to seal it, which we're not going to use the O-ring right this second. We're probably going to use a gasket. I don't really like the O-ring. We're just going to put one bolt in it. So that's going to fit just like so. Okay. So the reason these are countersunk is because you don't really have a lot of space here. You don't want you want as much space as possible. So the countersunk kind of eliminates that problem. Now the next fitting you need to buy is this. This is a 1/8 inch female British standard pipe thread, BSPT, to national pipe thread. Now this is kind of a tapered thread, but it's not really going to be a problem because this is the male and this is the female. So we're going to kind of thread this loosely in here. Again, I'm just kind of showing you this for mock-up. Of course, I'm going to use Teflon tape and get this nice and tight. And what you're going to have to do is install this piece by piece. You can't pre-assemble this and then install it, just because this will end up blocking the other screw. There's no real direction this can go except for at this angle, at least on my truck. And then you'll thread this into here. So when yours is all together, and of course it's loose, so it's not wanting to stay put, but it's going to look something like this. It's pretty simple. And then you will need to extend the factory wires to the sending unit, which originate on the passenger side fender. I'll show you that in a minute. So I know I talked about this kind of quickly, but here is the list of parts you need. You need an 1/8 inch female BSPT or British Standard Pipe thread to 8-inch male NPT coupler. That's the adapter that changes from the thread from the Toyota sending unit to eventually the ICT billet oil feed. The next thing you need is an 1/8-inch NPT female 90-degree elbow. It's a female on one side, a male on the other. It doesn't really matter which way you find it because there's only a couple makers of that fitting. And then the last thing you need is the actual ICT billet turbo oil feed plate. Now, I bought all of this stuff on Amazon for around I think it's $22. Sometimes I think I had to buy 2 of the elbows to get those, but it's really inexpensive. It just took quite a while to figure out what I needed. Anyway, hopefully you can save this image and everything works.
Now that I've got all of the pieces and the sending unit installed on the F-body pan, it is time to extend the wires from the factory harness so that we can reach this sending unit, as the sending unit is actually on the other side of the engine on the 1FC. This is the harness that extends to the oil pressure sending unit as well as the AC compressor. This is the wire for the AC compressor. We're going to have to leave that in this area and extend these 2 wires. As you can see, these are slightly different terminals. This is the ground for the sending unit, and this is the sensing lead. So we're going to have to extend both of these wires, and I guess you could probably ground this here, but I'm going to extend both of these wires and run them to the other side of the engine to fit the sending unit.
Now that I've got those wires extended, it's time to crank it and see if I've got oil pressure. Here goes something. Ah, yes, oil pressure. Sweet. Now it's loud because I've got that one downpipe disconnected and I have to fix the entire exhaust system, but that's next. I've got a few more things done. I'm getting really close. I've got the exhaust fixed. That was a lot easier than I thought. Probably took a few hours. Gonna show you what I've done. As you can see, now the exhaust is not up against the brake lines or on the cross member, where the converter was before. So I kind of moved that over. This is so tight right here between this converter and the transfer case. It's actually not touching either one. I hope it doesn't have a rattle, but we'll address that when we can. But the big thing I did, and I apologize for my welds. I had my settings on my welder set to correct, but the settings in my head were set to novice, apparently. But I kind of clearanced the trans lines and the exhaust for the drive shaft. Now, I don't expect the drive shaft to come up and like hit the bell housing. I don't think it's going to come up quite that far. But it was going to make contact with the exhaust. I jacked it up by the right front, and extreme articulation, it did make contact with the exhaust, so I had to fix that. I swung this whole pipe over, and there's a V-band. So overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I have not started to see how quiet it is, but we're going to do that here in just a moment. So I secured the transmission lines and the engine harness, well, at least the starting harness. And then there's my harness I made for the oil pressure gauge. So I kind of tied that all in together. I made a bracket for it right there. I used some GM factory harness retainers. Pretty happy with the way it turned out. I still have a little bit more to do. I got to attach that somehow to the side of the block there. The goal here was to keep things from rubbing and touching anything else and possibly causing a problem going down the road, as I do intend on driving this quite a bit. But this was actually pretty difficult to keep everything off of everything else. I like to use factory parts off of other cars, and a lot of what I used were from other cars, but I couldn't tell you what they are because they've been laying in my garage for years. So let's see how she sounds. So several good things. The truck's been running for about 15 minutes. The fans have cycled. The fan only ran for about 30 seconds and cooled the engine right off. Temperature gauge looks perfect. I did note, however, the oil light is on, and I think that's because the later 1FZ had an oil level sensor, and, well, it's not on this engine. So I will probably figure out a way to get the bulb out of the cluster, or I'll probably just pull the bulb. But it has good oil pressure. All the gauges look good. It's been running for a while, and I did hear a couple more exhaust leaks on cold start. I mean, when you build an exhaust system from front to back, you're going to have leaks, and especially when you're me and you don't know what you're doing. But I'm going to put the camera at the back of the truck and let you have a listen. I'm pretty happy with it so far. Found a few more things to do. I feel like anytime you take a few steps forward, you're going to take at least one step back. For whatever reason, it's not recognizing four-wheel drive. So that's something I need to look into. I probably depinned something or something's not grounded correctly, but hopefully it'll be an easy fix. I have the wiring diagram, so it shouldn't be too hard. I definitely need to remove the bulb for the low oil warning light. I'm not going to make the sensor in the GM truck pan work. Not interested in that. I check my oil religiously anyway. The transmission I've topped off, so everything seems good there. There is a check engine light, which I will decode before I will scan it before I drive it. But I think we're about ready for a first drive. That'll be in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.